Hey, thanks for making it to Veterans Daily. We are glad you made it. We got some really important topics to cover with you today. We're talking about 100%, how to get there, the mind blocks that many of us put in front of ourselves to even get to 100%, the different types, whether it's 100% scheduler, permanent and total, 100% through TDIU, or even temporary 100%. Now, this is the biggest jump, Clay, for a 10% increment jump in your ratings, right? So going from a 30 to a 40 or a 70 to an 80, going from 90 to 100% is roughly $1,500 per month of tax-free money. Now, I always like to look at these numbers, right? When we're talking about a $4,000-ish per month payment, I always like to look at it as the gross number, right? Yes, it's tax-free, but what would it be if it was taxed? If it was taxed, it would be closer to $5,000, which means that that's about $60,000 per year. Now, an important side note, Clay, before we jump into this, for those that have any level of service connection and are getting VA compensation, you get to decide when you need to disclose your income or not. In some cases, it's advantageous for you to disclose it. You're buying a house, you're buying a car. They need to know your income. Make sure you gross it up. Make sure you give them the grossed up dollar figure. If you're not sure what that is, tell them that it's not taxed and they should gross it up. Most lenders are going to use 125% of your net amount, which is what you receive from the VA. So again, that $4,000 turns into $5,000 from a grossed perspective. This is really important. It'll help you qualify for more, or it'll help you qualify easier because your debt to income ratio is lower. So just an important kind of piece to just throw out there for folks, because this stuff is so crazy that it's not easy for anybody. And if you're dealing with a lender that's not sure about how it works, you need to be the educator on it. So with that, Clay, I want to jump over to you just right out the gate with some thoughts on just the subject that we're going to be talking about.
Oh yeah, the monetary benefit. So everyone wants 100%, right? And it's kind of this weird relationship where no one wants to have the disabilities that would get you to 100%, but at the same time, there's monetary value and other benefits for you and your family if you are 100%. So it is this really weird relationship. And for this video, we're just going to talk about reaching that 100% and then the monetary value to that. And of course, the 4 ways to get 100%. I do like how you brought up the home lending. It also goes for if you're buying a vehicle. Anything that is non-taxable income, and don't think about it as, well, it's not taxed, so I can't claim it as income. It's not true. It's just non-taxable income. So if you file your taxes right, it's almost the deadline, April 15th. If you're filing your taxes, you don't claim your VA disability whatsoever. But if you're applying for a car loan or a house loan, a personal loan, whatever finance situation you got going on, if you're co-signing on something, that money is non-taxable. And I do like how you brought up that you need to let your lender know, whoever that person is, if it's like a car financier, whatever, just let them know saying, hey, I'm 100%. I got 37 per month. That's no dependents, right? We're rounding here. You want to say $4,000 and you have a spouse and 2 children. That's fine too. You have SMCs on top of that, like SMCK. All of that gets roped in as non-taxable income, and it is life changing. And another thing I want to bring up on 100% is everyone talks about property tax exemptions. I don't think people understand what that means. Okay. So in Virginia, you're going to get taxed per month. I assume it's the same across every state. I've never owned a home in any state but Virginia, so I can only speak on Virginia. But let's just call it $500 a month is your property tax. Mine is much more than that per month. And so that's also money that you would be putting back in your pocket every single month. Now, depending on what you do with your finances, you can put that what you would have paid for property tax and then do double payments on your car. However, financially, you want to set your life up. But that does lend a hand, or at least a thought about veterans should be thinking financially, especially if you have the opportunity and the privilege to be 100%. And that's probably the best way I would put it, is being 100%. Yes, it sucks. You have disabilities, and depending on the severity of those and the combination of those, it can absolutely suck. Okay. A funny one that I deal with, and I'll kind of give some personal information, is IBS and radiculopathy, right? There's a little joke there, but whenever I use the restroom a lot, my legs go numb. And then my wife is making fun of me whenever I'm trying to walk out of the restroom, right? And I'm kind of making light of the situation, but small things like that over time really do suck. So you might as well get paid for it and then take advantage of that. And it's really a privilege to have the VA, in this case, award compensation for those disabilities. And I would make a strong argument that veterans should be thinking financially and not just kind of being like, oh, I made it 100%. I'm going to buy, I'm only going to eat Hot Pockets and pizza rolls from here on out. It's like, well, you can do that. Okay. If that's how you choose to spend your money, or you can set your life up and your family up, whatever, people can make that choice. But yeah, the monetary values are insane. And we just covered a little bit of them. All right. I'm going to kick it back to you, Jason, because I can talk all day about money.
Yeah, absolutely, Clay. And you know what? You bring up a good point. It's not just money that you're receiving, it's money that you also don't have to spend.
Mm-hmm.
So, and that becomes important too, because again, if you're a working veteran, right, your money that you earn gets taxed, and then that has to be then spent on something. So an $800,000 house, for example, and oh, by the way, utilizing, now we're already going down all the rabbit holes. My gosh, I mean, welcome to this world. And this is why we started this channel collectively, is because we know that there is so much nuance in the world of veteran benefits that you really need to have some long form, go down the rabbit holes a little bit so people can understand how it all sticks together, because it literally is a gigantic puzzle. And many of us are working with 3 pieces out of a 300-piece puzzle. So number one, because we're talking about houses or homes, whatever it is, right? Townhome, condo, house, duplex, whatever. The VA, several years ago, I can't even remember the number now, maybe 4 years ago or so, eliminated the ceiling of their 100% lending for veterans. This is huge because many veterans were like, well, I can't even buy a house in the area that I live at 100% because the amount of loan that they will lend me is not high enough. So they've gotten rid of the cap. So if you qualify based on your debt to income ratio, you could literally buy a $1.5 million home or $2 million home at 100% financing. This is huge because where else can you leverage an asset of $2 million without any money out of your pocket up front?
Yeah.
Because remember, real estate is an asset. It's not like a car, a liability. It is an asset. The longer you own it, the more likely it is to go up in value. So it's just important to understand that. Number 2, I'm going to throw in the fact, and this isn't anything to do with 100%. I promise we'll jump into it. But if you have any rating whatsoever, your VA funding fee is waived. So that's gone. The rates are competitive. It's going to be lender based. So check with your credit unions, check with your different banks, get a few different estimates. You have a window of opportunity to do that and not affect your score anymore. So, shop 3 or 4 lenders and get your best kind of option up front. If you buy an $800,000 house today, for example, every state's different. But typically, you're looking at between about a 1 to a 1.5% of the value of the home. The purchase price is tax, real estate tax, annually. So an $800,000 house would warrant about an $800 per month tax. If you're 100%, your state may waive your tax. And even some states are less than that. Not all. There's a couple, I think, out there, but most states are at the 100%. If you're a 100% rated veteran, they'll waive your real estate tax. At $800 a month, thank you, because that pays for my car and my insurance or whatever else you're paying for, right? So it's keeping the money in your pocket. So now all of a sudden, your $4,000 per month because you're married and you have a kid or whatever at 100%, your 4,000 is now like 4,800. Oh, but wait a minute. My rooster had to crow. It's not just that 800, because if you had to go make that $800, you really made $1,100 in order to get taxed and get 800, right? So this is a very important, and like you, Clay, I could talk about this forever, because this is where we draw the line and go from kind of this reactive, I'm surviving, to, hey, look, I'm being proactive and I'm making moves that are helping me and my family achieve more, right? So the 100% is undoubtedly the best monetary benefit that you could possibly get because of the additional add-ons and all that stuff. What I want to throw out there to you, Clay, is I believe, and I'm going to throw it out and get your thoughts. I'm not going to, this is not pre-set up or anything. I'm totally fine with whatever you say.
Okay.
Okay. My thoughts I'll give after. But do you think that 100% rating is, I guess, roadblocked by ourselves? Do we self-segregate as veterans, as a group of veterans? Do we go, I don't really rate 100%? Do we do that and shoot ourselves in the foot because we're afraid to obtain it for whatever reason, or not? Or is it just we all want it, but we just can't get it because we don't qualify, right? So there's two different people there.
Yeah.
I want to hear your thoughts on that idea. I'm really curious to hear what you got to say.
Yeah, so there's so many different fronts, and I'm going to try to hit them all about, I feel like I don't deserve 100%. And to be honest with you, if you served, I'm just being very general here, okay? If you served 3 years and you got out for whatever reason, you were an administrator and there's really nothing that happened in service, you're completely healthy, you're probably not going to meet that mark. Now, that doesn't mean to say that same scenario, but it's the opposite where you're unhealthy. Maybe you suffered an MST, whatever that case looks like. Obviously, you have a road to 100%. So I do think there's some reality there that veterans have to face. But for the most part, the majority of veterans, right? There's 18.5 million veterans, and I'm kind of rounding. I believe 6.5 million are rated. That includes 0 to 100. So all VA disability compensation. So the majority of veterans aren't rated at all. And I have tons of friends. I could at least name 10 of them right now who refuse to even think about submitting a VA disability claim. And there are many, many reasons to that. Some do feel like they aren't disabled. And I hate the phrase VA disability. I really do. If we're going to word change anything, so I work in, I'm a federal employee for the Army, and specifically course development and an instructor. So we look at Army doctrine all day, and doctrine changes for words all the time. And the only change I want for a word ever is VA disability to VA compensation. I don't know why we can't do that. That would actually make sense because there's a lot of stigmas on VA disability. I was actually talking to someone who wasn't a veteran, talking about, and they were making the argument that that veterans aren't disabled. And I'm like, you're correct. It's VA compensation. Like if you were to rent a car and then you put a dent in it, guess what? You got to pay for that dent. It's the same concept. I'm kind of talking in circles here, so I'll just kind of go straight for the throat. In my opinion, a lot of veterans don't feel like they deserve 100%, and that's really where it gets at. And so you might be, you might be rated at 50, 60, 70, whatever. And there's two aspects to that. You don't feel like you deserve 100%, right? Which may or may not be true. And that word deserve gets a little dicey there. The question is, do you have the evidence in the current diagnosis? That's the question you need to answer. The second thing is another phrase I absolutely can't stand is poking the bear. Anytime someone says, I'm scared to poke the bear, I'm just like, dude, one, your conditions are static, right? Majority of veterans conditions, especially after the OIG report of 22, are going to be static, right? If you don't know if your conditions are static, talk to your VSO or do a FOIA request for your rating code sheet through the regional office. Not your entire C file. That's going to take 6 to 9 months, but you can request your rating code sheet. It's going to be static, probably. And so now there's this stigma of, well, I don't want to lose my rating. And then, and I hate that because first, we submit evidence-based claims, right? And the VA is going to rate your current symptom severity. And if that condition is static, you're protected, right? I know there's clickbait out there, and I've fallen victim to this myself as well, right? There's clickbait out there that says, the VA is going to take your rating. It's like, well, let's relax and look at when the VA actually does take ratings, and it's extremely rare. And so I think for those two reasons, veterans don't feel like they deserve 100%, and that's really those who are already rated. And then veterans are afraid to poke the bear, right? So there's that group, and then there's the veterans who don't even have a rating at all, who just don't even feel the need to submit for a VA claim, and that's their prerogative, right? That's their choice. I'm personally not a fan of it, obviously, but it is what it is. So at least that's my 2 cents on the whole situation. It is weird, I will tell you that. There's definitely no right answer, and it goes both ways. I am interested to hear what you have to say about that, though. Oh, you're muted. You're muted.
I was trying to block out the rooster. All right. So there are a lot of the same kind of mindset that you were talking about in my own kind of situation here. I think that I'm a little more on the side of that veterans, specifically those that have never filed anything, right? They're the one who has never filed anything, which is the majority, right? Sadly, of veterans. 70% of veterans have never filed a claim with the VA, or at least they're not service connected. That they believe that, one, they're not disabled, right? Because the damn word disabled puts in your mind that I have to be missing a limb, I have to be in a wheelchair, those types of things. Now, obviously, folks that have injuries from their military service are absolutely going to be service connected. However, the disability aspect of VA disability compensation really is the word, like you said, that sticks out in our minds. And we go, well, I can touch my toes. I can walk into the grocery store. I still have all my digits, right? And so therefore, I don't rate anything, let alone 100%. And oh, by the way, you know how you had your couple things that you hated the verbiage on? Mm-hmm. I hate 100%. Absolutely. Because it infers that that's the maximum. 100% rating should be reserved for the most catastrophic situations. The person rolling in the convoy that got hit and is forever changed. 100% should be for that person. So in our minds, we think that, and that's not true. You and I know that, Clay, that person is not on the 0 through 100% schedule. Trust me. They are special monthly compensation all the way 100%. And they're receiving whatever 2-3 times the amount that the 100% schedule pays out. And so there's a lot of weird verbiage out there that leads us down a path that is not conducive to our own well-being, or even allowing us to entertain the benefits that we've earned. Now, here's another thing. People that did not serve in combat go, well, that's really kind of for those guys or gals, right? And that's not true either. The bottom line is that we all wrote the same check. I don't know what's going to happen. I don't know where you're going to send me. Who knows, right? We all wrote the same check, and what happens at that, except for Vietnam folks, obviously, whole different story there. And God bless each and every one of you. And too little has been done too late, in my opinion, as far as anything for you guys and gals. So, but for the most part, right, we all write the same check. We don't know where we're going to go, what's going to happen to us, what we're going to experience in our time. Therefore, part of our benefits package is, hey, any condition that you get diagnosed with, that is chronic in nature or has some sort of a residual impact to your life is going to be compensated by the VA. Why? Because you're paid like crap the whole time you're in, right? And if you're lucky enough to make it out alive, we're going to take care of you on the backside. So take advantage of that. We have went 20 minutes into this without jumping into the 4 ways to reach 100, because it's that important for the mindset of each and every one of us to understand that we are worthy of seeking it. And I agree with you, Clay. Poking the bear, you know what? If I didn't want to poke the bear, I would still be at 0% probably, or nothing, right? So I had to poke the bear many times. I wasn't worried about it. Why? Because I know that my conditions are not better, and they're certainly not better, and they're probably worse. So if you want to reevaluate me, please, because you're going to give me a higher percentage because it's worse. So don't be afraid, unless you're like, I filed for whatever 2 conditions and they're both, hallelujah, I'm cured, right? Then maybe don't file, right? That's on you. You got to figure that out yourself. But for most people, like you said, Clay, they're static. Conditions get worse over time. Barring like cancer going into remission, right? So let's jump into now the 100% scheduler rating. What does that look like, and why is that its own 100%? What are we looking at with that for folks to understand, and what kind of things might we, besides the money, right, which we can touch on that, but what else can you expect from 100% or you should look into?
Yeah, so there's 2 avenues of benefits for all of these, right? You have the federal benefits, and then you have the state benefits. Obviously, state benefits are going to change, and federal benefits are going to change based on the percentage given or if it's P&T or not. Scheduler means you're 100% rated, but not P&T. And so, okay, well, what does scheduler mean? It means that one of your conditions that equal up to, using VA math, 100%, is not static in nature, right? Meaning it's going to have a routine future exam. So you are therefore scheduler. Now, the majority of scheduler 100% veterans eventually make it to PNT. And that re-examination, or the routine future exam, is going to happen between 2 and 5 years as per VA policy, right? So 2 years to really let that condition set in, so to speak. That would probably be the way I would describe it. And then before 5 years, because at 5 years, for whatever reason, is when the VA decides that your lifestyle has kind of relied on that compensation. So 2 to 5 years is going to be your scheduler thing. So if you're 100% and it's after the 5-year mark, I would probably start looking into your claim situation, just figure out what's going on. That's a side note. I don't want to go too deep into that though. But looking at VA math, so you could be, using VA math 100 or 86% static, but then your other conditions, maybe like mental health, maybe skin, because skin can be cured, right? There's Accutane, which is a very strong drug that does cure skin conditions, and then there's creams. That's why skin conditions are normally 0%. And if you have a 60% rating for skin, which I have seen a few times, it can be quote unquote cured. Obviously, if you have a burn, that's going to be static in nature. But there are different benefits for scheduler. Oh, and the good part is, depending on what state you're in, P&T might not be required for the property tax exemption. I don't know the states off my head. My advice would be for any veteran is to look at your state and figure out the state benefits for where you live at, and figure out how you file within that county. And so where I live, I file one time. That's it. Boom. I'm done. I don't never have to deal with it. The county right next door that my friend lives in has to file every single year, right? And Virginia requires the P&T mark. So it just depends on what your state requires. I can talk all day on this, Jason. I'm going to kick it back to you because I kind of threw 10 different subjects out there.
Yeah, no problem, Clay. So one of the things that pop in once you hit that 100% is also a time clock, not just for that 5-year rule that you talked about, Clay, which is a fantastic rule by the VA, right? So once you've proven that your condition is basically not getting any better over that 5-year period, the VA basically calls it static and moves forward. So there's also another clock, and it's the 10-year clock, and not the 10-year rule, although that one's good too, but it's the 10 years for DIC. So for dependency indemnity compensation, if you are rated 100% for 10 years, then you can get hit by a bus and your spouse can receive dependency indemnity compensation. In other words, your cause of death or contributing cause of death does not need to be service connected. That is huge, right? So no longer do you need to rely on that. There is some legislation that was kicked around for a while to reduce it from a 10-year to a 5-year period, which I am in full support of. And if you have the chance to look that up, please do and support it if you believe in it, which I don't see why you wouldn't. So the big thing I think here, Clay, is like you said, with a 100% rating scheduler, many folks will just transition over to the permanent and total. The biggest exception to that would probably be cancer. If your only real rating is cancer and you're rated at 100%, then you go into a remission, then they're just going to look at your residuals and rate you on that. Why? Here's the question. Why does a claim that you file for have a future exam, right? So in some cases, they may think or have evidence of a specific condition that could get better with treatment, like you were alluding to with the skin condition, right? So in some cases, it's not saying, oh, you're cured, but maybe you don't warrant a 60% rating anymore for that condition. Maybe you now warrant a 30 because we've got it kind of under control. So GERD would be a good example for that. So one, if you just get diagnosed and you've been diagnosed for a year and you file your claim for GERD, gastroesophageal reflux disease, on today's rating schedule, here we are in April of 2024, 60% is the maximum. Maybe you got 60% out the gate, but they want to see you again in, like Clay said, two to almost 5 years. To see if you still rate that 60 or if they should downgrade you to 30. That downgrade could reduce your overall, and then that's why they want to do that. So this is why it is extremely important for each and every one of us, especially if you're a 100% scheduler. Continue to go to your doctor, continue to document your condition, continue to have those conversations. And also, in some cases, and again, this is a nuanced situation, right? Clay and I could sit here probably and spend all day talking about different examples of veteran A, veteran B, veteran C, everybody different, right? So you could have one veteran that has every single condition except for one. That one is teetering. They need to make it to the 5 years, right? Then finally they make it to the 5 years. It stayed the same. Bam, they get permanent and total. The other, maybe they have two conditions, right? Tinnitus for 10%, which doesn't mean anything, and cancer. They're 100%. But now the cancer goes into remission, and now it's reduced to like a 30% or something. So that person needs to look at other conditions that they could be filing for during this period of time that they're 100% scheduler. Like, this is your moment in time to look at other things. I understand you're focused on your cancer, you're dealing with that. Lean on your spouse, lean on a loved one, lean on a veteran service officer to help you find other conditions that you could file for, because inevitably, hopefully, with the grace of God, you're going to fall into remission, right? I mean, that's the goal. Well, then that comes with a lower payment that you got used to. So, and you might not be able to go back to work. So, oh, by the way, you want to have a couple higher conditions in there that you could leverage for TDIU. So there's a lot to unpack there. I'm going to leave it at that, Clay, for 100% scheduler and just how important it is. I think if you could just recap a couple of the important bullet points to remember, if you reach that scheduler 100, just do a couple recaps for us, and then we'll move over to permanent in total and contrast it.
Yep, absolutely, I will. And I want to add the most common 100% condition that's not static that I've seen just over the last few years. So to recap 100%, right? You have disabilities that are not static that is pushing you to 100%, which is both good and bad, right? The number one thing, and I love how you mentioned it because it's what I was going to say as well. The first thing I'm doing if I have 100% not PNT, I'm going to request my rating code sheet, whether through a VSO or through the RO. That is the absolute first thing I'm going to do. The second thing I'm going to do is figure out which ones aren't static, and I'm going to hyper focus my healthcare around that condition. And there's an elephant in the room because what if that condition truly does get better, right? There is no gaming the game. And if you cross that line, the VA will come down on you very, very hard. So I just want to say that. But if that condition truly is one, either not getting better, so staying the same, or getting worse, you need to have evidence because the VA is going to look for evidence. That's most important. And the most common condition I see at 100% by itself is mental health that is usually not static. I'm not saying it can't be static. Obviously, in your very severe cases, you would see that, but it's not natural for a human to be able to not function at that 100% criteria for an extended period of time. Now, obviously, if that is you, I'm going to be real, that really sucks, and I'm sorry. But most people, right, will recover from a serious mental illness, an SMI, to at least function at that 70% rate as mental health is currently rated in April of 24. So that's probably the most common one I see that veterans are like, oh, I'm 100%, but not PNT. It's probably because they have a routine future exam for mental health. But other than that, we can transition into PNT, and I'll go ahead and start this one. PNT is the exact opposite, right? So according to VA math, your static conditions equal to 100%, and obviously that's 95% because we're looking at VA math, right? So you are 94%. All your conditions are static. You submit a claim for rhinitis, you get 10%. That's static. All of a sudden, you're at 95. Boom, now you are at 100% static, which is permanent and total. Static means the condition is not likely to improve over the span of your life. And I already know someone's going to comment, what about my knees? Are they static? One, we don't know. Okay, we can't answer that. But those questions always come up. And two, conditions by themselves, generally speaking, are not static or not static. It depends on you and your evidence and your severity of that condition, right? So let's take your knee. If you have knee strain for whatever reason, that may or may not be static, right? If you have missing cartilage that's deteriorated because of arthritis or whatever is happening, that's not going to heal, right? So naturally, that's going to be static. And you can kind of take that concept for any condition and say, hey, is this likely to heal? And just think about it from a non-medical standpoint. And most are going to lean on that static side. But regardless, get your rating code sheet if you're not PNT. That would be my advice. Now, transitioning to benefits, and I'll really hit on the property tax, and it goes back to what we had already talked about, Jason, in the beginning. It's not just $3,700 a month, and with dependents, let's just call it $4,000, right? For easy math, it's not just $4,000 a month. It's property tax. Okay, now it's $4,500, right? Because you get that $500 back in your pocket using $500 as property tax. All right, well, it's your annual car tax. You have a brand new car that's $60,000. I don't know what property tax it is. We're just going to call it $2,000 because I can't do quick math, right? So that's $6,500. All of a sudden, 4,500 of it is monthly, $2,000 is annually, and little things like that will add up. PNT is the goal, right? And I hate saying that, but PNT is the goal for any veteran submitting disability claims, that assumingly they would rate that P&T mark. I'm going to stop there because that's going to go downhill real quick because I do want to say something on that, but go ahead and take it, Jason.
You know what? I agree with you. And here's the thing. Again, many of us shortchange ourselves because we think, well, I would have had this anyway. My mom had migraines, my grandma, whatever, right? So we make these weird excuses, or, you know what, I'm getting older, no wonder my back hurts, or whatever the case is. Anything that can be traced back to, I first started kind of feeling odd about whatever, or I hurt myself, or I started getting heartburn, or I started getting migraine, whatever you can trace back to it first started during my time in service. Now, I will tell you this, just because you think that it started then doesn't necessarily mean it's going to be an easy case to prove, right? So there is that, right? You're going to run into that problem and you're going to have issues in some cases, but it doesn't mean don't try, right? The answer is always no if you don't try. I think the moral of this story is, if you feel as though you had a condition that first manifested during your time in service or as a result of your time in service, you should absolutely do everything you can do to get it service connected. And I don't care if it's a 0%, a 10%, a 60% rating, right? I back to your kind of little rant on things that you hate verbiage wise. I hate high value claims. Because it's like, it means don't look at other things, only focus on those. Well, focus on those and then you have an 80%, but if you would have did the other ones, you might have been 100, right? So file for what you deserve, file for what you have, file for the things that you got going on, right? The things that you can prove. When it comes to 100% permanent and total, I will tell you this. Yes, it's the goal in a way, for most veterans, because most of us are not going to qualify for anything on SMC, special monthly compensation. Again, that's reserved for the most severe type situations. There are a couple hybrid kind of options in SMC where it's kind of an add-on to your 0 to 100%, but that's kind of a whole other video, really. So 100% permanent in total. And I'd like to throw out just a couple ratings just to get people's minds going. And I get it. A lot of you are already well aware. Think about it as the new person that's first watching this. There's ratings out there. For example, today, April 2024, for GERD, maximum 60%. Gastroesophageal reflux disease, bad heartburn, 60% rating is the maximum. That's going to change, and it's going to go up to 80% as the maximum. Now, the criteria is changing, but that's besides the point. The bottom line is that you could be rated up to 80% for a single condition. You could be rated 50% for migraines. You could be rated 40% for arthritis, right? So there's a lot of different conditions that could warrant substantial ratings, along with the smaller ones that could get you to 100%. And I will tell you, there's not a single one of us out there that would have thought a year prior to getting out of the military, whatever branch, thought, oh, you mean with gastroesophageal reflux disease and migraines and arthritis, I could be at 100%? Mm-hmm. No, you think I got to be missing a foot and a hand, right? So this is just to help dispel some of the, I guess, weird methodologies that we may have in our own minds on what it takes to get there. No, these are regular conditions that you might have had anyway. It's just because you happen to join the military that you're being covered. And it's a very important piece. I'm going to throw this last piece out here to the audience and you, Clay, and then and kind of hear what you have to say. I will say that sometimes, and this goes back to the moving from the scheduler to the permanent and total 100%, sometimes, surprise, the VA doesn't get it right. You should be permanent and total because all your conditions to 100% equal 100%, but for some reason the VA missed it because there's not some magical flashing light that goes, hey, change Clay's rating to permanent and total. Clay filed 17 different times because he knew he could take as many bites of the VA apple as he wanted. So he kept filing, and finally he got to 100%. And now all of a sudden he's got enough for that permanent and total, but VA still has him on scheduler. Somebody needs to tell the VA, hey, look, I have enough that you, VA, consider to be static, that I should be 100%. The VA is not sitting there going, well, I don't know. I might change one of those. No, they're going, oh, well, we didn't know. We didn't look. Sorry. Thanks for bringing it up because we'll take care of you. That's really what they're saying. Oops, our bad. There you go. So what are your thoughts on that, Clay? I'd love to hear it and see what you have to say.
Two things. So one of my good friends that I still work with today, that is exactly what happened to him. He was awarded 100% scheduler. Now, he didn't know that he should have been P&T. About 3.5-ish, 4 weeks went by. The VA sent a letter and was like, hey, my bad. You're actually P&T. Boom. End of story, right? So it does happen. And that was maybe a year and a half ago. So that does happen. Second thing, if it happened to me, what would I do? What I would do is first, obviously, understand that you are not or should or should not be P&T, right? With your rating code sheet through your VSO or through your RO. Once you have the facts, and that part's key, because don't go barking up a tree that don't exist, right? Once you have the facts, I would make an appointment with my regional office and speak with someone there and say, hey, here are the facts, what's going on. And there is a formal process through the regional office for that. You could also go through your accredited VSO, but personally, the RO would be the fastest in my opinion. And you could also make an appointment with Vera, which is a whole other topic if you want to, but that's also at the regional office. At least that's what I would do. And it does happen, unfortunately. And, VA raters, I'm not going to say it's not their fault because it totally is. But they're human, right? They're just, imagine myself and Jason behind a keyboard all day. It's 4:30 p.m. I'm like, dude, I'm getting out of here. Submit this last one. I'm out. That's basically what's happening. And so things get left out all the time. And no one's going to tell you that, right? And if you just lollygag and willy-nilly throughout your life, you could be missing out on benefits. Last thing I'll say, and I'll kick it back to you. Let's just hypothetically say 10 years went by for my friend who is supposed to be P&T. There would be an effective date with that, and you would have to argue with your state and your county and get property tax back pay. It would be a massive headache, but it's possible to get back pay for that. Obviously, we don't want to get there, okay? So knowing up front is the way to go. But yeah, Jason, I'll kick it back to you on that one.
So one of the other, well, two of the other fantastic benefits from the federal government on the VA side with regard to 100%, and I know you know this, Clay, but and I know you're going to shake your head, yes. Chapter 35, $1,488 per month. $1,488 per month additional into your household if your spouse or dependents are utilizing that program. You can have 7 children. Now, granted, they'd all have to be, I guess one right after the other to all be on at the same time. But in any case, they can go to higher level of education approved by the VA and get $1,488 per month. This does not pay for tuition. This is not like the GI Bill. It's a different thing, but it does pay you, the spouse or the dependent, directly $1,488 if you go to school full time. There's, trimmed down versions if you go half time, 3/4 time, quarter time, whatever. But you have to pay for the tuition yourself. So if you go to a, community college or something like that, the cost is cheap and therefore you pocket more of the money if that's what you're looking for. Or you can go to a very expensive school and take that $1,488 and give it to the school every month. So it just depends on what your goals are. So that's a great benefit. I love that benefit. The other one is Champ VA. If you decide that you no longer need to work, or you get to the I don't need to work age and you need to cover your family, your spouse, or what have you, Champ VA will act as a primary insurance for your loved ones. So that's a great benefit as well. They also cover prescriptions and so forth. So those are two great ones. Also, the automobile, I'm pretty sure every state for 100% rated veteran, I think in probably most cases, they want you to be permanent and total, will waive your registration fee for a vehicle. Now, the kind of handoff is that you get your blue handicap placard with your license plate, which, it is what it is. For some people, it's like, I don't really feel like I'm that disabled, but it's the only real workaround that they could come up with in order to make it work for your state, is kind of that trade-off. I have one. I just don't really utilize those parking spaces because I can make it to the store. Unless I had to drive like really far, then I look pretty funny for about the first, 20 minutes, all hunched over. God, it's rough. But if I'm only driving 10 or 15 minutes, I can maneuver all right. So that's a great benefit as well. Just want to throw that one out there. So with that, Clay, let's talk about TDIU, unless you have anything additional, which you do. Look at you.
There's
All right, so
something
then
I really want to talk about.
back to you.
Again, generally speaking, most veterans are not P&T straight out of the gate, right? I leave service 3 months later, I'm P&T. That is, I would argue that's rare. It's definitely uncommon, okay?
Yeah.
I would argue it's rare. Most veterans go 5, 10, 15 years and then eventually rate the P&T mark. And what Jason and I have talked about this a billion times. What it comes down to, you've basically got two options. Okay. And I'm just going to be very blunt here. And then we'll transition to TDIU. You can either, I wouldn't say fight the VA. You can either be on top of your case and get your evidence and check for increases in secondaries, or you don't. That's it. Those are your options. And so you can either hop on this boat and, truck along with every other veteran you see in Facebook group, whatever, complaining, right? I would probably keep the complaining down to a teeny bit and just continue to gather evidence, or you don't. And that's pretty much the real answer there. And you know what? The last thing I do want to say, a lot of veterans, for some reason, believe just because they have a condition that it should be service connected, which isn't the case, right? I'm going to use sleep apnea, and this one is going to be harsh, okay? But I'm saying this to make a point, right? Tons of veterans develop sleep apnea because they stop working out, their diet is poor, they start gaining weight according to their body mass index, they are technically obese, and they develop sleep apnea. And then you submit that claim because you hear everyone else talking about sleep apnea secondary, and you're denied. And then the rationale on your DBQ is going to say something like, hey, this is because the veteran is overweight and these service-connected disabilities didn't cause the weight gain. And that is probably the most common rationale for sleep apnea denials that I see. And I want to say that because, hey, if you're properly rated at 40% or you're properly rated at 90%, that is totally okay. There's nothing wrong with that. There's nothing wrong with any of it. If you are not properly rated at, 100% and you're at 90, but you have the evidence, then go for it. Okay. So it's not, every veteran deserves 100%. I don't want to push that idea. The idea is be properly rated. With being properly rated, I think that's a good transition into TDIU, unless that sparks some thoughts.
I just want to double down. I just want to double down on what you said. Absolutely, right? And that is the point that I try to make with, don't focus on high value claims. Focus on the things that you can prove manifested or are a result of your time in service.
Absolutely.
File all that stuff. Then obviously, like you said, look at secondaries, blah, 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 and over time, right? These things might take years, right? The things you have today might get you a 60% rating overall. And 10 years from now, you've developed secondaries that help push you over the top to the 100%, right? It's just important to have the information and know that it's there, because too many times, what do we hear? Oh, I wish I would have known, right? Yeah. So that's, again, what we're trying to eliminate. And I agree with you, Clay. It's just about being appropriately rated for the conditions you have. So with that, then let's go ahead and turn it over to TDIU, which stands for Total Disability Individual Unemployability, which is a mouthful. Sometimes you'll hear it as IU, which is just individual unemployability. I've even heard people just say unemployable, right? I'm VA unemployable. Okay, well, whatever. The VA won't hire you. I get it. No, so this is a really, in my opinion, a very, very special benefit that is maybe oftentimes not even realized that it exists. Obviously the folks that watch our channel here, our joint channel, Veterans Daily, or yours on the CivDiv, or mine at Veterans Info Tab, you're a smart group. I mean, you are the ones who are aware, right? So it's the new people that are starting to trickle in, and the people that that you're able to share this information with are the ones that that really we need to reach out to and let them know that this stuff even exists, right? Grandma or grandpa so-and-so that served in whatever branch that's trying to work at Walmart but can't because they have high blood pressure and other conditions from their time in service that they're not even really aware of, that they could end up getting some presumptives that could lead them to TDIU. It's like, my God, how come these people don't know? So with that opening, which is somewhat dramatic, I don't know why, I want to push it over to you, Clay, to get your overview, and then we'll dive into the requirements, but just the overview of what TDIU is and really how important it is and how impactful it can be for folks.
Oh yeah, so I actually want to start this with the two opinions I have, which are pretty strong. And I
Here we go.
apologize for this one.
Here we go.
So the TDIU, in my opinion, keyword there's opinion, I think it's the biggest scam of the VA to start off with. And there's a reason for it, and I will explain my argument, because I don't understand how symptoms can be so severe that the veteran cannot work, but yet the VA is going to award TDIU, which is a good thing. I'm on board for that. But why not just make it P&T? If the symptoms is so severe that they can't work, why even award TDIU in the first place? And the reason is because it comes with an income cap, right? And so you might be able to do YouTube full time or work at home full time, but your symptoms are still severe enough to not work at Walmart or insurance company or whatever it is you're doing, right? That's my personal opinion, and I will die on that hill. But looking at TDIU, that's what it is. Your disabilities don't rate cumulatively 100%, and there's two criteria for that. There's actually some hidden secret ways of reaching TDIU without hitting the criteria, which is so weird to me. But it's the VA basically saying, hey, your symptoms are severe enough that you can't work. Here's 100%, but now you have an income limit. And it's less, it's about $15K. I'm going to round it up. And it's not based on dependents. That is period. If you're TDIU, I don't care if you got 8 kids, you are capped at that amount. So keep in mind, that's pretty much what TDIU is, right? It's a temporary 100%, assuming that the TDIU doesn't, well, it's because there's TDIU P&T as well. And so you'll see like the 2 to 5 year thing for TDIU. You can still be reevaluated on that. And then I'm not going to say most because I don't have the data, but a lot of veterans that are TDIU eventually become IU P&T. And that's a pretty common thing that you'll see over that 2 to 5 year span. I'll leave it at that because I have some other opinions as well. And there's so much to talk about TDIU because it's very nuanced. And with all things, it's very ambiguous with the VA, especially on TDIU. I'll stop there. I'll kind of get off my little horse and let you take it.
So, yeah, your opinion. I like it. Whatever. Everybody's allowed their own opinion, right? So, and I think that there are some conditions, just to kind of be the devil's advocate here, right? That there are some conditions in which maybe that's all you filed for. And like many veterans, you don't even know the other things you can file for. And so you just never did, right? So one, it allows that specific person that doesn't realize that grandma's headaches could be filed for as well, right? So let's say that you have, for example, a mental health rating at 70%, but you're like, I'm fine everywhere else. I could do everything. I just saw some crazy shit.
Yeah.
And that's the only thing that's messing me up, right? I don't have any other problems. I'm good to go. I'm fit as a fiddle. But I don't put me anywhere near anybody. I don't want to work by myself. I can't keep focused. I just can't. So what happens to that person, right? Well, you don't rate 100%. I'm sorry, Mr. or Mrs. So-and-so. Well, I can't work. I can't do anything. You're going to leave me out here on the street. Okay, this could be for you. Or let's go the other route. Let's say that your migraines, and I am a migraine sufferer. I'm rated for migraines. My mom has migraines, right? All that stuff. And I was one of those people like, I would have had migraines probably anyway. I just never started getting them until I was in the Marine Corps. Oh, okay. Well, after fistfuls of Motrin all my life now, yeehaw. There was some times, I will tell you. Now, I've never been on TDIU, but I could tell you that, boy, for those migraine sufferers out there, and I don't know if you have migraines, Clay, but boy, for a while there, and I'm talking years, for a while, I was getting migraines probably like, I don't know, 2-3 times a week. Mm-hmm. And luckily, I worked in like salesy type jobs, so it's like I could kind of disappear, but then my paycheck also shrunk, right? So it's like you better make up for it when you feel good. And, it's one of those things where I could see somebody with severe migraines, like it's not easy to work. I mean, you can't even look at the Swiss cheese. I mean, like little blind spots and, star clusters and major pain. And, you just needed a dark room. And even then it'd drop a horse. So I could see not being able to hold down a job. And like, look, if my only thing is migraines and I have nothing, I didn't document anything when I was in service. I was a good Marine, made sure I didn't go to sick call, right? Made sure I didn't go to the battalion aid station. Shame on me. I wish I would have, but all I can claim is my migraines because I happened to check a box that I had headaches, right? So at least I was able to get that service connected. But now my life sucks ass. And, thank God I got TDIU to lean on, right? Because I got, I guess that kind of goes in because the maximum is 50%. So it goes into kind of the sneaky way into it, but it would work in your example that you will give, I'm sure. So I'm a little bit of a different opinion maybe than you. I know that they reach out to your prior employer. They ask for your past experience. It's not like it's a cake in the walk. There's no guarantee in getting TDIU. It's not as easy as some people make it sound, but it does work. And here's the little scammy part on it that I'll throw in for your benefit, Clay. You could be 79 years old and be like, I can't work anymore due to my service-connected disability of X, and and get TDIU. They're not going to ban you from TDIU because you're 79, mm-hmm. right? Even though you're probably not going to work anyway. Just saying, right? So there is that part, which I'm not going to call the VA and say, hey, you should put an age limit on TDIU, but it's here. This is what it is. I think that it's a good benefit that allows veterans to reach that 100%. Is it you're going to get, you can't get rich using it. I mean, you'd much rather be Scheduler 100 or PNT 100. And my suggestion to folks is, look, if you're a TDIU and you think ever that you want to actually make any sort of income, because again, it's the poverty threshold that's set by Congress, changes every year, whatever it is, 15 grand-ish is what it is. If you ever want to make more than that, then you need to be looking at other conditions, secondaries, increases, that type of stuff, and try to get off of the TDIU and slide over to one of the other regular schedules. But for those that can't work, right? Due to a service-connected condition, this is absolutely an avenue that you should look at. I'll jump into the criteria after you talk a little bit more, Clay, because I do want to hear more of your thoughts, your opinions. And again, look, there's no opinions or opinions. There's no, I mean, who's right, who's wrong. It doesn't even matter. It's just thoughts, because the reality is this is what they offer, and here's the criteria for it. If you meet it, you meet it, right? Who cares what two talking heads are saying? So it's about the awareness aspect, and looking at it in a way in which will benefit your life is really what I'm looking at. So back to you, Clay.
Oh yeah, so TDIU is great, and I'm all for it. The only part I wish the VA would just take away is the income limit, right? Because that's the scammy part from the VA to me. I think it's an ancient rule personally. And then there's a few other things I want to talk about too. And there's no data for this at all, just what I've seen. There's no age limit for TDIU. That goes both ways. So you can be 21 years old in TDIU. That really sucks, by the way, if that is you.
That would suck. Yeah,
Yeah.
agreed.
But there's no age, you won't find that in M21 or 38 CFR at all. But it seems like, just from people I know that are TDIU, are 55 and up. Generally speaking, that's who I see on TDIU. Now, does that mean that if you're younger that you can't be on it? No, what I'm implying, and I can't back this up with facts, what I'm implying is it goes back to it's not easy. TDIU, the younger you are, is in my opinion, a more difficult argument to make because you have many, many years of your life left. Okay. Now, are there youngsters? And I can't believe I just said that word because I'm one of them, right? Are there young veterans on TDIU? Yes, absolutely there are. It's just not common. And then the other thing I wanted to talk about is, yes, there are criteria for that, and I'll go ahead and push that back to you. But on the migraine example, you don't have to be 70% to rate TDIU or have the 60 and 40 or whatever the second criteria is, right? There are sneaky ways to get in. Migraines is a great example, and you won't find that in 38 CFR either. That's why I say it's a little sneaky secret, right? There's a document, there's a whole guideline called the M21 TAC 1. That's the real nerdy stuff of VA. If you're looking at 38 CFR and you're like, oh, this is easy, and you want to get into something more difficult, the M21 is for you. You can go ahead and read that bad boy, right? But if you Google migraines M21 TAC 1, you'll find a clause in there that says, hey, if migraines alone, which are 50% max, if they cause the veteran to miss or produce economic inadaptability, which is that 50% criteria, there's completely prostrating, then economic inadaptability. Those are two different things, right? If you're on the economic inadaptability piece and you truly can't work, the VA will then award you TDIU based on migraines alone. You could have nothing else and just migraines, but meet that economic inadaptability piece and still be awarded TDIU. And how would you know that without watching this? Honestly, you probably wouldn't, right? Because the it's so buried in VA policy. And the point I really want to drive home on TDIU is, if you truly can't work, you need to build a case that you can't work, and here's why, and understand your disabilities, and go to Gunny Google, right? Start reading the guidelines for your disabilities. Migraines is a great example of that. It's also extremely common in Gulf War/post 9/11 veterans. And so that's probably going to be the most common sneaky way to get to TDIU. But other than that, that's really all I have. I just think the income limit is a punch in the gut to veterans as a whole, because it's the VA acknowledging that your life sucks, basically saying, man, that sucks. Here's 100%, but you can't make more than 14 grand, right? And your wife might have an LLC and you might be able to work from home, but now you can't meet that income limit. And I already know someone's going to say, well, what if, you just work for a salary that is below the poverty limit? It doesn't work like that. Okay. The IRS requires people, humans, not just veterans. The IRS requires people in a company to make a reasonable wage. If that's the case, Donald Trump would pay himself, $10 an hour versus his billions of dollars, right? And that's obviously an extreme example, but you can't just say, "Oh, I'm gonna pay this person 14 grand, although they're working 70 hours a week." It's not gonna work like that. Okay. So don't try to scam the system, because the system will slap you so hard. And you can look at OIG reports of veterans scamming the system. It happens every day. Okay. And they're in prison and they have to pay back millions of dollars. I'll get off that box for that one, because that's a pretty dark hole right there. But looking at the requirements for TDIU. Go ahead and take it, Jason.
So yeah, absolutely. And I'm gonna just kind of double down on what you were saying. I agree that the cap on earnings sucks, but I think from the VA's perspective, they're kind of put into a corner, right? Like, how can you pay these people at 100% if they don't rate over here on either one of these? So, I kind of get it. Now, when it comes to the standard qualifying for, one more thing. So back to the sneaky way, and I'm glad I teed it up for you. Yeah. Golf tee. All right. So with the migraines thing, you can be rated at 50% for migraines, even if you are currently working. You just need to prove to the VA that you're having difficulties financially. Maybe you've missed work, right? Maybe you've taken non-paid time off. Your pay stub's showing you're supposed to work 80 hours, but really you only got paid for 53 or whatever because you had to take time off, right? Non-paid time off, any sort of write-up letters that you may have gotten for missing work or anything like that. Something that can show that you're having some sort of a financial issue due to your migraines, which it makes sense, right? And then any sort of late payments on utilities, if you filed a bankruptcy, if you have a foreclosure notice, anything like that, showing that you're having financial issues and that you can say that it's due to your migraines because you weren't able to work, will help you do that. Even though you are working, it's just sporadic or what have you, because out of necessity, right? I mean, you're not going to just automatically go live under a bridge. You're going to try the best you can to get through. So make sure that you prove your case. It's all about evidence, right? So in order to qualify for TDIU in the standard, easy to find ways, which would be just in the standard 38 CFR, you're looking at either having one service-connected condition that is rated at least 60%. So you have one rating that is 60% rating. If you have GERD, if you have GERD at 60% today, and that GERD or other condition that you have that's service-connected, right? Must be service-connected condition, is causing you an issue holding or maintaining gainful employment, then that could be an avenue in. Now, sometimes getting a 60% rating or higher is kind of hard. It could be a mental health condition as well, could be a 70% there. But sometimes those are hard. Those higher ratings are hard to come by. So the VA has a second avenue in. If you have more than one rating, with a combined overall rating of 70%. So your overall rating is 70, 80, or 90% rating, and at least one of your conditions is 40%. Then that is another avenue in. So those are the two kind of criteria. So either one condition at 60% or one condition at 40% with an overall rating of 70% or higher are the two kind of qualifiers into applying for TDIU. Doesn't guarantee it. Nothing guarantees anything. You got to file for it. You got to give your 5-year employment history. The VA may contact your most recent employer. So all these things come into play. So make sure that you have that. I always suggest, and I know Clay does too, when able, especially for more complex claims, and I will say that this is one, you want to have a second set of eyes. Find your local accredited vet rep or veteran service officer who can help make sure that you have all of the documentation that you need. With that, I'm going to kick it back to you, Clay. Any final words on TDIU before we move on?
Just to be blunt here, TDIU sucks. If that's you, truly, I do feel sorry for you because TDIU is not. No one wants TDIU. Okay, and what really sucks, and this is probably the most. This is a sticky situation. Let's say you technically rate TDIU, but you don't want TDIU, but then you're awarded TDIU because I just said TDIU a lot. The VA can award TDIU without you filling out whatever form it is. I forgot the number. They can award you TDIU as needed. You may not want it, and that position you have to decide. Hey, which route am I going down? Okay, which route am I going down? Am I going to go down this TDIU route? Am I going to be like, hey, VA, I can work from home? That you can figure out that situation for you. That's a huge decision that you have to make, and it's just a bad situation overall, right? The younger you are, the worse it is. If you're in retirement age and you're TDIU, I guess party time, right, would be the answer. If you go to bingo halls or whatever it is that you want to do, there's a joke there. But yeah, those are really my final thoughts on TDIU. I'm not a fan of it at all. I never recommend that to veterans unless they have a very niche situation where they truly can't work. That includes like telework, um, you know, ends and odd jobs with their family, whatever that looks like, because it sucks. There's really no way around it.
Right.
EIU sucks.
It,
And there's that's about it.
and Clay, I think that the point here really is don't utilize TDIU just to get to 100% so you can be 100%, right?
Exactly.
You will make more money by taking any job that suits you and your situation and being 70% or 80 or 90 plus whatever you're making. I mean, any minimum wage job working full time would get you over how much you would make on TDIU. So now maybe there's going to be an exception to that, whatever. But for the most part, right? But the reality is that if you are a veteran who literally cannot work, hold a job, have gainful employment or anything, and you're like, look, I'm living on a shoestring. All I need is $3,800 a month to be able to pay my bills and stay home because that's all I can really do. Then go for it. If you cannot prove your other thing, because again, look, here's the problem. The vast majority of us did not document all of our conditions during service, so therefore it makes it very difficult to get anything Nexus to get service connected for. So we're trying to manufacture evidence. We're trying to find buddies. I haven't talked to these people in 30 years, right? That type of stuff. And so it's this very big uphill battle, which again causes a lot of stress and anxiety and all that stuff. If this is the route that you need to go to live, right? Now you know. That's really it. So with that, let's jump over to temporary 100%. Clay, give me the overarching overview. Some people aren't aware of it, so give me kind of the overview, and we'll jump into it.
Oh yeah, so temporary 100% ratings, right? The VA giveth, the VA taketh. That's temporary, right? And so there's really four conditions that stand out. One of them is a umbrella that I really see temporary come into play. Are there more? Absolutely, right? Number one is going to be back surgeries. If you have back surgery, like on your spine, that's going to take you out of work. The VA is going to be like, that sucks. Here's 100% for 4 months, right? And at the 4-month mark, they're going to reevaluate. Can that be extended? It absolutely can. Okay. Can it be shortened? It absolutely can. All right. Knees and shoulders are pretty common to put you out of work for at least 4 months. And then obviously cancers that cure, right? And really it's remission, meaning It might come back, and if that's you, that really sucks. Those are temporary ratings, right? But the surgery-based ones are easy. You don't even have to apply for them. Your VA healthcare team sees what you're rated for. And if you need back surgery, that process is automatic. And it's not like you're going to wake up from surgery and be like, oh my goodness, I didn't do my surgery claim for that, right? It happens in the background, and your healthcare team is going to take care of that. Now, that becomes an issue when you're going on the private side of the house. There's more legwork you need to do. Definitely work with an accredited rep on that end. But that's the general overview, right? The VA says, hey, here's 100% for X amount of time, and they take it away. And before I shoot it back to you, I do want to reference an OIG report that came out this year, I believe in February. Don't quote me on that. That pretty much said, specifically for hips and knees, the VA, lo and behold, did not follow the proper procedures to award temporary 100% for hips and knees. So when in cases where it should have been extended and cases where it should have been shortened, it was about $70 million that the VA accounted for that should have been awarded to veterans. And it really goes on to say this: if you cannot work because of your knee surgery, you need to tell someone that, right? And argue your case, because the VA is not going to get it right. And that affected, I want to say 60 something % of the hips and knee surgeries that came out of the VA, which is a huge number, right? We're talking millions of dollars here, which absolutely sucks. On that front, I'll turn it over to you, Jason.
Yeah, I would say that our videos and our messages are really trying to set you up for what to expect. It's up to you to inspect what you expect. So don't just assume the VA is going to get it right. Mm-hmm. Reach out to them, talk to them, have a signed fiduciary reach out, have your veteran service officer, before you go into surgery, sign over authority to a accredited vet rep who your spouse can go say, hey, look, can you call in and check on this or what have you, right? Because the VA doesn't always get it right. We see that all the time. So don't think that they're going to get it right just because it's you. So I'm going to read it directly from the VA's website. I'm a fan of From the Horse's Mouth. Mm-hmm. So you may be eligible for this temporary 100% rating, right? So imagine just for a second that you're rated at a lower percentage, a 30% or 20% for a condition, and that's your overall rating, and you've been moving on with your life, but now here you are and you need this surgery. So now you're not working, like Clay said, and now all of a sudden you're going to get this 100%. That's going to be helpful during this recovery period. So let's see what the VA has to say about it. Well, it says, if you had surgery, both of the following must be true. The surgery required a recovery time of at least 1 month, or reports show that the surgery or treatment was for a service-connected disability. Okay. And here's the second bullet point. The surgery resulted in severe issues. What could that mean? Well, they give us some examples and they give us 5 bullet points here. Surgical wounds that haven't totally healed. Well, pretty much, most major surgery is going to take time to heal, right? Even beyond the visible scar, there's the internal stuff going on that needs to heal. Stumps from recent amputations. We have many Korean War vets that had to deal with severe cold and had to have amputations as well. Could have Vietnam vets who have diabetes and severe complications and end up having amputations. So something to be aware of. Another one here is being unable to move due to being put in splints or casts to help with healing. Next one is being unable to leave your house, known as house confinement. And the last one is being required to use a wheelchair or crutches. All right, so that's important stuff. So in addition to that, they say if you did not have surgery, you must have had one or more major joints immobilized by a cast. Now, Clay, how long, if you know it, if you don't, that's fine. we could pull it up real quick. How long can somebody be on 100% pay for a temporary situation?
Okay, so there was a change made, I believe 2 years ago, maybe 3 years ago. It used to be 1 year for knee specifically. That changed to 4 months, and it can be extended up to 1 year, okay? The VA is probably not gonna go 4 months straight to a year. It'll probably be on a month-by-month basis. Now, that's rare. I just gotta get that out there, right? So 4 months is kinda the standard for that, looking at knees, shoulders, and your back. And the good news, it's not really good news because you had surgery. That's not so good, right? But whenever you have residuals on certain disabilities, like your knees, it cannot be rated lower than 30, which is a solid rating for a knee, especially if you have a bilateral factor there. But yeah, it's 4 months for most joints. I'm sure there's other time criterias for various other appendages and body parts, but 4 months for your joints, up to 1 year.
So I'll give the general as well. And the one thing that I do want to throw in is when it comes to surgeries from the VA, so the VA doing a surgery on you, if they screw up and mess something else up on you, those conditions can also be service connected conditions. They treat it the same. So if you had any sort of weird complications or something went wrong, I mean, heaven forbid that it doesn't. I mean, that's not what we want to happen. But again, it's important that you understand. I mean, if you went in with a 30% condition and you left with other conditions because they screwed something up, I will use the something that probably, hopefully, wouldn't happen. You went in for a right knee condition, but they did the surgery on the left knee,
That's
right?
wild. Wow.
Yeah, right. So I mean, things happen. So now, if your left knee's all jacked up, now you can get service connected for your left knee. So the general guideline here from the VA's website is you may be able to get temporary increase in compensation while you recover from those types of surgeries and so forth. The temporary 100% rating may continue for 1 to 3 months depending on your unique case. You may be able to get an extension for up to 3 more months if your case is severe. Then there's an example here on the VA's website. A veteran had a left knee injury that resulted in a 30% disability rating. As the knee problem got worse, the veteran's VA doctor recommended a surgery to stop more damage from happening. Since the doctor wouldn't know if the surgery was successful until 3 months after the veteran's 1 week stay in the hospital, we, the VA, granted the veteran temporary 100% disability rating for those 3 months. So the doctor said, hey, look, I need to see this person back in 3 months to make sure that everything went good. Cool, veteran, we're going to pay you 100% while you're recovering those 3 months and going back. Now, let's say that the doctor, let's add to that example, says we need more time, we need another month to really make sure something's not happening right, whatever. Great, you might be able to get that extended for 1 more month, right? So then in that case, that would take it to the 4-month period. So with that is the temporary 100%, which it's not long like the other ones, right? Your scheduler will go for, it could be indefinite. Your permanent and total, indefinite. Your TDIU could be indefinite. So this is, just like the name suggests, a temporary 100% to kind of help offset some of the expenses that you may incur to loss of income, which is the whole kind of purpose of VA compensation within the laws and so forth. So your earning capacity and so forth. So with that, is there any last thoughts that you have, Clay, before we wrap up?
I'll say one more thing and then I'll kick it back to you to wrap up, because you mentioned if the VA made a mistake or they did some wrongdoing, there's something called a tort claim, which is extremely, extremely rare. TORT. I highly recommend getting a lawyer if that's you. I know one veteran that was successful on a tort claim. And you basically have to make the case that the VA healthcare system messed up, and it has damaged you permanently. And that claim, from the VA perspective, you could be awarded a permanent 100% based on the tort claim. Obviously, situations are going to dictate that, but it is a real thing. If that's you, I would personally, I would at least consult with a lawyer and see if you have a case. I understand it's going to be extremely rare. Outside of that, Jason, that's all I have. For those of you that think you're 100%, I would just say get your evidence. And remember, it goes back to two options. You either fight for it or you don't. And that's pretty much it. That there's no middle ground. You either do it or you don't. And I hope that ultimatum kind of gives a fight or flight response to get you up and get moving and seeking your health care, building your evidence, and submitting evidence-based claims. To you, Jason.
Yeah, I'm glad that you ended on that, because it did spark the idea of the poking the bear thing again, right?
Yeah.
So just as a reminder, look, you and your situation better than anybody. You know, if you've been going to the doctor and the doctor says you're still the same, your condition still sucks, here's more prescriptions, or whatever your situation is. So if you know that you are not better in any way, and you may actually be worst, Marine Corps. So you need to rest assured that, look, even if the VA was to call an exam on you, I have all this evidence because I've been going to the doctor and none of my conditions are better. In fact, they're actually worse. So give me a higher rating, VA, right? So you need to be able to go in with some sort of confidence, right? And then the opposite is true. Look, if all you have is 3 conditions and they're all, hallelujah, better, I mean, you need to think about that, right? So all that to say is that I think that most of us fall in that first bucket, which is our conditions are the same or getting worse. And that's just the nature of the beast. And it's important that you continue to go get documented all your evidence along the way as you pursue 100% in any one of these things. So with that, document your stuff, be educated, as Clay likes to say, and utilize all of the resources that you have to better your life, not just for you, but your dependents, your spouse, and those around you. Be a resource for them. With that, we'll end it there. Thank you so much for watching. We truly appreciate you, and we'll see you next time. Remember, if we don't take care of each other, something went wrong.